Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Orthodoxy Fact or Fiction. Now, I know that there's some questions that came out of the funeral videos that we did, and one in particular is related to something called ossilegium. Now, ossilegium, what is that? Well, that's basically a fancy Latin term for what is called an ossuary, or in Greek, an osteophylakio. So, ossilegium is a very ancient practice. It actually dates from the Second Temple period of the Jews. Now that runs from about 30 BC to about 70 AD. So the body is buried or placed in a tomb. Now, normally the body is wrapped in linen, just as we read about Lazarus or we read about Jesus. And the body is left to decay or decompose. And then once it was fully decomposed, which takes about 2 to 3 years, then the body would be stripped and cleaned, and then the bones and the skull would be placed in a stone box. So kind of very similar to what we have in terms of like a cremation urn, but certainly not cremation. And then these would be stored in this tomb. Now, one of the obvious reasons for this is that in areas like Greece or Jerusalem, the Middle East, there's not a lot of space, there's not a lot of room as we would have here in America for individual burial of bodies. Again, picture this box or this very small tomb, and so once the body decays, the bones would be placed in there, and multiple family members could be placed in there once their bodies then decayed. So there's clearly a space saving here. Now, this practice continues even on today, and it certainly happens in Greece. And so what will happen is the body will be buried, it will be wrapped in a linen cloth or shroud, and then again, after 2 to 3 years, it will be then exhumed, and then once the bones are cleaned, they'll usually be either a family ossuary or there'll be a public ossuary, and then the skulls will be marked in some kind of manner. Either they'll have a number across the forehead, or they'll have a design that is particular to the family, or they'll actually have the name on there. But the actual bones, the thigh bone, the arm bones, all of those, will be placed in this usually metal container and stored. And then, like I said, multiple family members can be stored in that container. Now, one of the issues with this is the cost that is associated with it, because in Greece, your cemetery plot is leased. So if you want to be buried, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. So normally speaking, it's about 300 euros to have this exhumation process done, and then it's about 50 euros a month to keep the body in the ossuary itself. So this brings up the question of desecration of the body, because in one of my videos about cremation, I said that we don't practice that because it's desecration of the body. So wouldn't digging up a body and then placing marks on the skull and putting them up for display, couldn't we see that as a desecration? So at least the church's answer to that is no. Why? Because we see this as an established practice in Judaism. So if we look back at what happened with Lazarus and we looked at what happened with Jesus, in both cases, we have the idea of a tomb. And in that tomb, Lazarus was placed and he was wrapped in linen cloths, just as Jesus was. And then when Jesus was going to resurrect Lazarus, remember what Mary said, after 4 days there will be a great smell. So it didn't sound like there were plans to bury him. And we certainly have archaeological evidence that states that the practice of ossilegium was active during that Second Temple period, and that the Jews did not consider it to be a disgrace of the body. So in this sense, is it explicitly stated in the Bible? No, it is not. Can we infer that? And through historical records, can we show that this was done in a respectful manner? Absolutely. If you travel to Greece or other Orthodox countries, you will find that monasteries use the ossuary practice for the monks. Especially when I went to Madeira and I saw in the church there that they had a whole room where they had all of the monks' skulls who had passed away from the beginning of the monastery with a number on their forehead, on the skull, and then the bones then were stored respectfully underneath the shelf of where the skulls were. So in this sense, we don't see it as a desecration of the body. Well, thanks for watching this episode of Orthodoxy Fact or Fiction, and I promise that our next videos are going to be a little bit lighter in topics than talking so much about death and funerals. So, see you soon.